Welcome to our channel. Hollywood Movie Review. Captain Phillips 2016 Movie Review. Captain Phillips is a 2013 American biographical action thriller film directed by Paul Greengrass. Based on the 2009 Maersk, Alabama hijacking, the film tells the story of Captain Richard Phillips, an American merchant mariner who was taken hostage by Somali pirates. It stars Tom Hanks as Phillips, alongside Barkhad Abdi as pirate leader Abdi. The screenplay by Billy Ray is based on Phillips's 2010 book A Captain's Duty, Somali Pirates, Navy SEALs, and Dangerous Days at Sea, which Phillips co-wrote with Stephen Talty. Scott Rudin, Dana Brunetti, and Michael DeLuca served as producers on the project. It premiered at the 2013 New York Film Festival, and was theatrically released on October 11, 2013. The film was a critical and commercial success, grossing $220.6 million against a budget of $55 million. Captain Phillips received 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Supporting Actor for Abdi. Richard Phillips takes command of MV Maersk, Alabama, an unarmed container vessel from the port of Salalah in Oman, with orders to sail through the Gardafui Channel to Mombasa, Kenya. Wary of pirate activity off the coast of the Horn of Africa, he and First Officer Shane Murphy order strict security precautions on the vessel. During a practice drill, the captain notices the vessel being followed by Somali pirates in 2 skiffs. Knowing the pirates are listening to their radio traffic, he pretends to call a warship for help, requesting immediate air support. One skiff turns around in response, and the other, crewed by 4 armed pirates led by Abdi, loses engine power trying to steer through Maersk, Alabama's wake. The next day, Muse's skiff returns, now fitted with 2 outboard engines. Despite the efforts of Phillips and his crew, the 4 pirates board the ship by ladder. Phillips tells the crew to hide in the engine room, just before the pirates storm the bridge and hold Phillips and the other crew members at gunpoint. Phillips offers Muse the $30,000 in the ship's safe, but Muse's orders are to ransom the ship and crew in exchange for millions of dollars of insurance money from the shipping company. Shane sees that the youngest pirate Bilal does not have sandals and tells the crew to line the engine room hallway with broken glass. Chief Engineer Mike Perry deactivates the onboard power, plunging the lower decks into darkness. Bilal cuts his feet when they reach the engine room, and Muse continues to search alone. The crew members ambush Muse, holding him at knife point, and arrange to release him and the other pirates into a lifeboat. However, Muse's right-hand man Naur Najee refuses to board the lifeboat with Muse unless Phillips goes with them. Once all are on the lifeboat, Najee attacks Phillips, forcing him into the vessel before launching the boat with all 5 on board. As the lifeboat heads for Somalia, tensions flare between the pirates as the effects of the plant-based stimulant khat wear off, and they lose contact with their mothership. Najee, agitated, questions Muse's leadership when they are intercepted by the U.S. Navy destroyer USS Bainbridge. Bainbridge's captain Frank Castellano is ordered to prevent the pirates from reaching the Somali coast by any means. Even when additional ships arrive, Muse asserts that he has come too far and will not surrender. The negotiators are unable to change his mind, and a team from DevGru parachutes in to intervene. Phillips attempts to escape but is recaptured and beaten by Najee. While 3 DevGru marksmen get into positions, Castellano and DevGru continue to try to find a peaceful solution, eventually taking the lifeboat under tow. Muse agrees to board Bainbridge, where he is told that his clan elders are arriving to negotiate Phillips's ransom. Najee, in control of the lifeboat now, spots Phillips writing a goodbye letter to his wife and snatches it. Phillips attacks Najee but Bilal subdues him with his gun butt. Najee beats Phillips, now bound and blindfolded, and prepares to shoot him. Bainbridge's crew stops the tow, causing Elmi, Bilal, and Najee to lose balance, giving the American marksmen clear shots, and they simultaneously kill all 3 pirates. Muse is arrested and taken into custody for piracy. Phillips is rescued and his injuries are treated. Although in shock and tears, he thanks the rescue team for saving his life. Columbia Pictures optioned the film rights for Richard Phillips' story in May 2009, just weeks after his rescue from the Somali pirates. A year later, in April 2010, Phillips' memoir, A Captain's Duty, was published. In March 2011, actor Tom Hanks attached himself to the project after reading a draft of the screenplay by Billy Ray. Director Paul Greengrass was offered the helm of the untitled film adaptation during the following June. A worldwide search subsequently began to find the film's supporting Somali cast. From this search, Barkhad Abdi Rahman, Faisal Ahmed, and Maha M. Ali were chosen from among more than 700 participants at a 2011 casting call at the Brian Coyle Community Center in Cedar Riverside, Minneapolis. The 4 actors were selected, according to search casting director Debbie Delisi, because they were the chosen ones, that anointed group that stuck out. Producers visited the National Navy UDT SEAL Museum to see the bullet-scarred, 5-ton fiberglass lifeboat aboard which the pirates held Capt. Phillips hostage so that they could accurately recreate the boat and interiors for the set. They were also able to view an example of the Boeing in situ scan Eagle UAV used to monitor the crisis, as well as the Mark 11 Mod 0, State Route 25, sniper rifle, the type used by the U.S. Navy SEALs, both also on display at the museum. Principal photography for Captain Phillips began on March 26, 2012. Filming took place off the coast of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea. 9 weeks were spent filming aboard Alexander Maersk, a container ship identical to Maersk, Alabama. The container vessel was chartered on commercial terms with Maersk Line. USS Truxtun, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer and sister ship of USS Bainbridge, served as a set piece in the film. Captain Phillips grossed $107.1 million in North America and $111.7 million in other countries for a worldwide total of $218.8 million, against its budget of $55 million. In the United States, the film grossed $25.7 million in its opening weekend, finishing second place at the box office behind Gravity, $43.2 million. It made $16.4 million in its second weekend, remaining in second. The film was unable to secure a release in China, which caused Sony Pictures to be concerned about the profitability of the film. Based on information revealed in the Sony Pictures hack, the film made a net profit of $39 million, when factoring together all expenses and revenues. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 93% based on 279 reviews. The website's critical consensus reads, "Smart, powerfully acted, and incredibly intense, Captain Phillips offers filmgoers a Hollywood biopic done right and offers Tom Hanks a showcase for yet another brilliant performance." On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 82 out of 100, based on 48 critics, indicating universal acclaim. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale. The film was nominated for 4 Golden Globe Awards, including Best Picture, Drama, Best Actor in a Drama, Hanks, Best Supporting Actor, Abdi, and Best Director, Greengrass. It did not win in any of the categories. The film was also nominated for 9 British Academy Film Awards, BAFTAs, including Best Film, Best Direction, Greengrass, Best Actor, Hanks, Best Supporting Actor, Abdi, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Abdi won the film's only award for Best Supporting Actor. The film was also nominated for 6 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, Abdi, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Sound Editing, though it did not win any of the categories. Since the film's release, there has been controversy over its portrayal of Captain Richard Phillips, with several crew members claiming that he was not the hero presented in the film, according to lawsuits filed by more than half of the crew of the Maersk, Alabama. The crew members claim Phillips was at least partly at fault, along with the shipping company and the ship operator, for an insistence on being fast and making money. Getting the Alabama within 250 miles of the Somali coast. The lawsuit was reportedly settled before it went to trial. Phillips told CNN's Drew Griffin in 2010 and in a court deposition in 2013 that he ignored the numerous warnings that urged him to go farther out to sea. When asked in 2013 why he decided not to take the ship farther offshore, Phillips testified, "I don't believe 600 miles would make you safe. I didn't believe 1,200 miles would make you safe. As I told the crew, it would be a matter of when, not if. We were always in this area." 66 Between 2009 and 2011, pirates from Somalia had attacked ships as far away as 1,000 and even 1,300 nautical miles. Phillips's first mate Shane Murphy stated in an interview with Vulture published on October 13, 2013, that he was satisfied with how the movie portrayed both Phillips and himself, and stated that he was only disappointed that the film did not show footage of the crew's families at home or the president's comments on the hijacking. The film's director Paul Greengrass publicly stated that he stands behind the authenticity of Captain Phillips, despite complaints of inaccuracy with how the film portrays the events surrounding the hijacking, and at the end of the day, it is easy to make anonymous accusations against a film. But the facts are clear. Captain Phillips's ship was attacked, and the ship and the crew and its cargo made it safely to port with no injuries or loss of life. That's the story we told, and it's an accurate one. Idris Elba is positively ubiquitous, at the moment, anyway. The voice of Chief Bogo in Zootropolis, he's also the menacing Shere Khan in the Jungle Book, and he's been opening up to the press about playing the villain Krall in Star Trek Beyond, due out in July. For now, though, we have to settle for him playing an action role in Bastille Day, released on Friday, April 22, Certificate 15. In Paris, skilled pickpocket Michael, Richard Madden, lifts a woman's bag, unaware of its contents. A bomb. When it explodes, he becomes the main suspect and finds himself public enemy number one. He's pursued not just by the police but the CIA, one agent in particular, Breyer, Idris Elba. And there's also the people who were really behind the bomb, who are stirring up unrest among the Parisians around the July 14th holiday. They have their own motives, and Breyer is trying to unravel the whole conspiracy, all by himself, of course. Only now he has help, after a fashion, from Michael. Bastille Day's director, James Watkins, has been open about wanting to create a fun, Friday night roller coaster of a movie, one with throwbacks to the action films and TV series of the 70s and 80s. At the same time, however, he's set the film very much in the present day. There's all the technology you'd expect, but also a storyline that makes use of the current terrorism situation. How to reconcile the two? In truth, it's not always a comfortable marriage. There are times when the film feels too close to the bone and isn't quite the piece of entertainment that it sets out to be. But, if you can live with that and put it to one side, you do have something that's a close relative of those fun action movies in the 70s and 80s. There's the apparently mismatched pair at the center of the story, who actually get along okay and indulge in banter along the way. They're straight out of The Professionals or The Sweeney. There's plenty of action, but without the usual reliance on CGI for a change. The fights are more traditional fisticuffs, although there are a couple which are perhaps more suited to 2016. One of them, inside a prison van, has Elba taking on several baddies single-handed in a confined space, is genuinely fast and furious. It's all part of the entertainment. There's more to be had in the humor between the two main characters. Elba, having at last caught Madden, asks him why he ran away if he's innocent. "Have you seen yourself?" is the reply. He has a point. There are moments of unintentional humor as well. The gang talking about launching hashtags in their social media campaign sounds awkward in translation into English. To French ears, it probably would sound fine. Elba is, of course, very much the star. Yet he can do the is reckless and irresponsible action man stuff in his sleep. He cut his teeth on it, but at least he tackles his role with energy and a sense of fun. Certainly, there's no sign of him phoning it in. He could do with a partner who provides a more substantial partner in crime fighting. Madden, by comparison, is lightweight and pretty, and it makes for a lopsided partnership. Not that Elba fans will have any problem with that. Bastille Day is an old-fashioned, action-paced, thick-ear thriller with more than a flavor of the 70s and 80s. And that means its director has pretty much succeeded in creating the kind of film he had in mind. It certainly fits the bill as a Friday night action film, as long as you can put recent events to the back of your mind. Before going to the preview screening of Bastille Day, directed by James Watkins, I will admit I was concerned that an action film featuring a terrorist plot might be too soon and in poor taste after the attack on Paris in 2015. However, the film, starring Richard Madden, Game of Thrones, and Idris Elba, Luther, Prometheus, makes quite an interesting and worthwhile statement about media hype and corruption, which makes for a surprising twist and a thoroughly enjoyable f. The plot revolves around Michael Mason, Madden, who is an American pickpocket living in Paris, who finds himself hunted by the CIA when he steals a bag from Zoe Navali, Charlotte L.E. Bone, that contains more than he bargained for. Sean Breyer, Elba, is the field agent on the case and, in the spirit of a good action film, is rogue and a rule breaker. He soon realizes Michael is a pawn in a much bigger game, and there are twists, turns, gunfire, explosions and car chases on the way to uncovering a large-scale conspiracy. Bastille Day has all the elements of a great action film and follows the Die Hard formula. While it's not quite Die Hard, it reaches some pretty great heights, and it consistently entertaining and exciting. Set in Paris, the scenery is a mix of old and new, and the classic architecture juxtaposed against the corruption and violence is cleverly portrayed through some high-level cinematography. Richard Madden is excellent in his role as the caddish pickpocket, touting the skills of a magician, while managing to be sexy, funny, and a total action hero. Elba is tough, mysterious, sexy, funny, and a badass as Breyer, and the relationship between he and Mason builds gradually and believably as the unlikely duo take on the bad guy. L.E. Bone is equally badass as Zoe, putting on a stellar performance as the woman duped by her lover into starting a war and the catalyst for the action in the film. Bastille Day is a fun, action-packed thriller with a solid plot, excellent performances, and some genuinely funny moments. It's got great effects, and will keep you entertained from go to woe. When the trailers were first released for Bastille Day a few months ago, everyone was saying Idris Elba doesn't need to be James Bond, as he now has his own character Sean Breyer in what could potentially be a new franchise. They were nearly correct. Bastille Day isn't an amazing movie, but Elba elevates above being a generic-born knockoff with his badass portrayal as Breyer, a CIA agent who plays by his own rules to get the job done. It probably would have been better if he was playing a British character, as his accent is all over the place, but his presence and charisma make you not really care about that. When he is interrogating bad guys or chasing them across rooftops, he is intimidating and believable. The only problem is, though, we have seen this before in Bond, Bourne, and every other clone since. The story was very current though, and I can understand why they are changing the name of this movie to The Take in some markets after the tragic events in France earlier this year. It's slickly directed and the action is well shot, there's no shaky cam or noticeable CGI, and the action highlight is definitely a fight inside a moving van. The last half hour has some decent action and it's R-rated too, so it's never boring, it's just a little uninspired. I liked how it was actually filmed in Paris, so it feels more believable, and like I said, after events from earlier this year it hits a little too close to home in parts. Why watch a movie about this subject when the news is even more shocking? The villains are pretty generic and forgettable, but I also couldn't quote a single line of dialogue either. Overall, Bastille Day gives us a badass new character in Idris Elba's Sean Breyer, aside from his wonky accent, and there are some decent action scenes, but you'll probably forget about it within 15 minutes. So Bastille Day is here, and is it a film? Yes, well, it is an action film, and it does have some action in it, and if it has been a couple of years since you have seen an action film you may get some enjoyment out of it, but if not, well, what a waste. I mean seriously, you have Idris Elba, one of the most charismatic and strong action stars in cinema at the moment, and you can't put together a decent film. Bastille Day tells the story of Zoe, Charlotte L.E. Bone, who is an activist that finds herself in over her head after her boyfriend gets here to put a bomb in an empty building, Michael, Richard Madden, a pickpocket that finds himself in over his head when he inadvertently steals the bomb, and Sean, Idris Elba, as a CIA operative that can't play by the rules because he knows better than everyone cause reasons, who all get spun off course when the terrorist bombing goes awry. Oh, and there are a lot of French cast, but as they are all one-note filler for the plot bar one or two, there is not really any point explaining them. Before I talk about the frustrating things here, there were a couple of things that did work in the film. Even though they have him portraying one of the most cliched characters I have seen in a long time, Idris Elba still fights through the banality to provide at least a competent performance. When it come to the action, most of it is stock slandered stuff, though there was one sequence in the back of the truck that was the standout and actually had the audience engaged for a couple of minutes. So now the not great, look, I can take shaky cam or leave it. If it is done well, it can provide a sort of intensity, like you are right there in the action, but this is not one of those cases. Here at best it just makes things hard to follow, but at other times it is just distracting. There is one scene in an integration room where there is a slight shake to the camera, and it looks like someone forgot the tripod on the day and they didn't do a good enough job stabilizing the footage in post. The story is at best forgettable, but at worst completely predictable. There are no surprises in this film whatsoever. To the point, if you watched the first 15 minutes, I bet you can pretty much plot out the rest of the film from there, which is a pity because, like last week's Bad Neighbors 2, there are some interesting concepts being employed here, just really poorly. Then there are the inconsistencies. The film is set in France, but people go around speaking English when there is no reason for them to be doing so. A lot of the editing is really weird with some really noticeable cuts, which is really jarring. The CGI in places is just terrible. Richard Manning, which we know from Game of Thrones, can be really charming. Here is just a wet blanket, a buddy cop that no one wants, and from that distance Michael would have been killed by the first bomb. All in all, this feels very amateur with its construction, like it was hacked together from a number of different components then given a French coating, and there you go, a finished film. Look, maybe there were issues with the cut of the film I saw, given New Zealand and Australian ratings usually match up, and given the wide distribution, from M in Australia to R in New Zealand, here I feel like we might have gotten two different films, so maybe something didn't translate. I mean, I doubt it, but maybe. So can I recommend Bastille Day? No, not really. After watching Bastille Day I had but one thought: gee, I miss the good Bourne films, because what I just witnessed was Bourne light with none of the competence or intelligence, and just nothing but shaky cam. By Brian McNamara. You can follow Brian on Twitter here. When he's not chatting about movies and TV, he'll be talking about international relations, or the solar system. Have you watched Bastille Day? Let us know what you thought in the comments below. Feel free to share this review on any of the social medias, and you can follow us here. Check out all our past reviews and articles here, and have a happy day. In this year of thoroughly underwhelming franchise blockbusters, I unregretfully did not see the likes of Batman vs Superman, Suicide Squad, or X-Men, Apocalypse, yet even I wasn't able to avoid disappointment. Possibly the greatest new action franchise this side of the millennium, the Bourne series, came back with its original star and director in Jason Bourne, so it was tipped to be the shining example of an action franchise done right rather than the chaotically wrung together greatest hits collection that the film ended up being, offering absolutely nothing new to the series nor action blockbusters in general. Fortunately for me, I'd already had my gritty espionage blockbuster thrills from a lesser known, yet more deserved action thriller Bastille Day. Although Bastille Day doesn't feature any memory loss plot points to shake things up like in Bourne, nor the sometimes tricky story structure, it does similarly have the kick-ass and very physical balls-to-the-wall action scenes, as well as an exhilarating on-the-move story, plus a finger firmly on the pulse of contemporary social activism amongst the general public. Bastille Day opens up with a scene of a beautiful naked lady walking through a busy plaza, which sounds crude, but ends up showing how such a sensationalist act is just sleight of hand for our pickpocket protagonist Michael, Richard Madden, to rip off unsuspecting and distracted citizens of their wallets and jewelry. Such a ripe analogous opening for a movie like this, but let's not get too deep into it. Unluckily for him, he pickpockets a planted bomb, which he is pinned for after it detonates and causes terrorism hysteria across France just days before the Bastille Day holiday. He's tracked down by CIA's Sean Breyer, Idris Elba, who then uses Michael to track down those responsible for the bomb, who as we see are a terrorist organization who very sneakily use social media outlets to manipulate public opinion, especially amongst the activists and protesters. Although Madden is playing the unlikely hero, who is more brain than brawn, who must learn the ropes of beating people's heads in as he goes along, it's Elba and his monolithic presence who leads the film with the assured assertiveness in his physicality and voice, as well as his expertise in beating up any armed forces who gets in his way, showing that he's itching to expand into other certain espionage film roles. Given our two protagonists spend a great deal of the movie together chasing down bad guys across Paris, and just a little less time chasing each other, their dynamic together somewhat resembles the archetypal buddy cop duo. There's the usual banter between the two, with Michael's tension-alleviating quips acting up against Sean's deadpan straight man, but this humor is neither groundbreaking for the genre nor irritatingly unwelcome. Admittedly, Bastille Day works better at its macrocosms rather than its nuances, with the thrilling action scenes melding in well amongst the clearly presented themes of malleable social activism and big government cynicism. Like Bourne, the action scenes harks back to the days of CGI-less in-camera on-screen biffs, keeping up the adrenaline with a varied array of chase scenes, close quarters fights and shootouts, exhilarating car chases, and even a mixture of the four. This kind of raw and unfiltered action is brilliantly shot, apart from the 2 or 3 erroneous GoPro shots, and edited with ferocity, yet clarity. Bastille Day should have been more recognized as the action thriller of the year, though its release and reception was stifled due to 2 real-life terrorist attacks. The film's February 2016 UK release was delayed due to the November 2015 terrorist attacks in Paris, with the film eventually getting an April/May release across many European nations. The decision to release the film in France just before Bastille Day backfired horribly due to the actual Bastille Day terrorist attack that took place during the celebrations in Nice. The film was pulled from French cinemas soon after, making the terrorists win just that little bit more. It only just had its American release in November 2016, obviously under a new title, The Take, where it underperformed at the box office and with snooty critics. It's unfair that the explosions, fighting, and death that occur in our world have an effect on smart action thrillers like Bastille Day, but not the even more gleefully and consequence-free violent films like the superhero blockbusters, but it goes to show how timely and socially potent a film like it is. If you're craving a film from 2016 that was meant to thrill and excite audiences and actually succeeded, Bastille Day may be the anti-franchise piece of work you're looking for. Mere months after the tragic events of last November, it's hard to gauge how viewers will respond to a narrative that pivots on a fatal bomb attack in central Paris. While the bilingual film hits UK screens on April 22, audiences will have a couple more months' distance to place between life and art in co-producing territory France, where it's slated for release, logically enough, on the eve of Bastille Day in July. Accidental topicality, however grim, didn't much dent the international gross of the recent London Has Fallen like Bastille Day, a shoot 'em up in which it falls to an indomitable American to get Europe out of a significant security pickle. Happily, Watkins' film isn't quite so crass about it. No administration emerges wholly covered in glory here, though Elba's lone wolf agent reckless, insubordinate, and irresponsible toward human assets, as the script hoarily informs us upfront pretty much does. The hard-headed cop who doesn't play by the rules could hardly be a more familiar character type, though in casting Elba as such, Bastille Day smartly capitalizes on the popularity of his small screen Luther persona and takes full movie star advantage of his imposing physical presence. "Have you seen yourself?" sputters small-time thief Mason, Madden, when Elba's iron-armed agent Breyer demands to know why he evaded capture. The smaller man has a point. Mason, however, has, even, bigger problems to contend with than Breyer's manhandling. A troubled Vegas-born runaway who survives as a nimble-fingered pickpocket on the Parisian streets, he gets more than he bargained for when he lifts a handbag off distressed young radical Zoe, Charlotte Le Bon. The bag contains a bomb, intended for the headquarters of France's right-wing National Front, that leaves 4 civilians dead when he unwittingly tosses it on a busy Pigalle sidewalk. Suddenly, this small potatoes criminal is the object of a nationwide terrorist manhunt. Enter Breyer, bullishly heading a secret CIA investigation separate from that of the French Interior Ministry, which is just as well, since it turns out the latter is improbably embroiled in a supersized conspiracy, shakily orchestrated around the city's Bastille Day celebrations. As both agent and his dirty quarry become French police targets, then, they're forced to collaborate. Watkins and his co-writer Andrew Baldwin have some fun exploring the law-serving potential of Mason's refreshingly old-school criminal know-how, notably in a witty, gliding sequence that sees him extract vital information by invisibly playing a handful of bar patrons against each other. Watkins, who impressed with his nasty, lo-fi horror debut Eden Lake in 2008 before moving on to the less distinctive genre stylings of 2012's Daniel Radcliffe vehicle The Woman in Black, stages such modestly scaled tension scenes with impressive care and fluidity, defying the restraints of an evidently tight budget. Shot with no-nonsense clarity by DP Tim Maurice Jones, a sustained chase across the French capital's steep, noble rooftops doesn't aim for the high-octane spectacle of Bourne or Bond, rather, the focus is kept on the perilous physical trickiness of the course, the participants' feet sliding and clattering to breath-pausing effect. Even more constricted set pieces are executed with clean spatial logic and coherence, a pummeling punch-up in the back of a police van, edited with rattling precision by John Harris, shows up the blurred, blender-style cutting prevalent in far pricier Hollywood actioners. For all the elegant functionality of its craftsmanship, the human element of Bastille Day falls short. Diverting as its various good cop bad cop face-offs are, the film doesn't give viewers much reason beyond the easy, almost incidental charisma of its leads to care who's left standing. Supporting players are particularly ill-served by the get-the-job-done scripting. Kelly Riley, given such a gutsy showcase by Watkins in Eden Lake, is called in for a colorless favor as Breyer's by-the-book CIA superior, while even the Pix villains in high places run low on French flair. At least the contrastingly genial approaches of Elba and Madden keep us on side, the former all-sandpapery attitude, the latter puppyish and slippery sweet, both creditably auditioning for higher-risk assignments. Even Elba, however, isn't cool enough to pull off the film's incongruously naff closing credits tune, a cheerily dated, Fatboy Slim-produced lounge number over which Elba sheepishly husks, "It's the road less traveled if you come for this ride." 007 producers, your consideration is hereby invited, though maybe look elsewhere for the next Adele. It's like a fake movie within a real movie somehow busted out into the real world. Jumped off the shelves of the video rental store in the Lost World, Jurassic Park, and wished itself real, perhaps. Like Pinocchio. Bastille Day. Starring Idris Elba and that one guy from Game of Thrones who got killed off like 3 years ago. Grab a holiday that no one has yet foisted a movie plot onto, toss in a badass actor ready for his action hero breakout, give him a bland sidekick, set it in a recognizable but still slightly exotic location, one that allows for Euro villains. The script writes itself. Except you don't need a script, because Bastille Day is a jokey conceptual riff on Hollywood cliches, right? All it needs is a poster and a slam-bang trailer and a couple of exciting stills. That's all most movies are anyway. Right, maybe this is the sequel to Channel, the action movie that Jerry Seinfeld and his friends mentioned a bunch of times. This is plausible. Elba's, The Jungle Book, Zootropolis, CIA agent Sean Breyer was, like, a young rookie when terrorists blew up that train in the Channel Tunnel, and he's still haunted by the shit that went down there, which is why he is so reckless today, and why he is still in France, so he can, I dunno, lay flowers every year on the grave of the little girl he couldn't save on that damn train. If only he hadn't followed the rules. So today he doesn't follow the rules, like when he recruits pickpocket Michael Mason, Richard Madden, not Jon Snow, to help him hunt down terrorist bad guys. And cowardly Michael has no choice but to go along with this insane idea because he has to clear his name. He snatched the wrong bag, and it exploded inconveniently in a public place. Sean and Michael aren't actual characters, they are suggestions of characters that might be elaborated upon if this were a real movie. I mean, it is a real movie, but in wishing itself to life, Bastille Day had no way of knowing what was supposed to be in between the bits that make for a good trailer. It's an enchanted scarecrow doing a poor job of distracting you from noticing that it is shoving the straw back into its popped button. There is intermittent fun to be had as Sean and Michael race around Paris pretending to be American, chasing each other, and later smashing up cars and the like. The scarecrow put on a good song and dance, too. But you might as well just watch the trailer and save the price of admission, the impact is the same and you'll have saved a lot of time. If Bastille Day were a jokey fake movie, it would be less instantly forgettable than it is. It's neither silly enough to be genuinely funny nor serious enough to be gripping. Mostly it's the sort of movie that fake movies are making fun of. Really, with the lady CIA boss, Kelly Riley, Heaven is for Real, Calvary, who is all smooth smart competence and whose story is probably a lot more interesting than these two guys, except this movie ain't about her. Really, with the damsel in distress, Charlotte Le Bon, The Walk, Yves Saint Laurent? Every attempt at a snarky action movie quip flops, though I may announce myself when I enter a room from now on with a shout of "It's the American." The only laugh I got from a movie that is, I grant, intended as cheerfully ridiculous, though it fails at that, was wholly unintentional. The bad guys plan to foment unrest at a Bastille Day protest parade via Twitter, as cover for their big bad crime, and that's not even the laughable bit. It's when a villain says, and this is the best part, menacingly something akin to "unleash the hashtags." That's better than the actual dialogue. There, I have improved the experience for you. In fact, in the kind of movie that Bastille Day should have figured out it wants to be, "Unleash the hashtags" might have been truly awesome. But it's not in on the joke that it accidentally becomes. In British spy thriller The Take, Idris Elba stars as a CIA agent who runs roughshod across Paris in order to stop a group of French criminals. Agent Breyer, Elba, is more Dirty Harry than James Bond, though. A CIA psychological profile aptly sums up his bedside manner as lacking interpersonal empathy. He's not just a tough guy, he's a bull in a china shop, and he makes no apologies for his dickish behavior. Breyer would be detestable if he were played by almost any other actor. The scene where he clotheslines American pickpocket Michael Mason, Richard Madden, draws a gun on him, and boasts, "Yeah, motherfucker, now what?" perfectly exemplifies his nastiness. But because the line is spoken by Elba, I almost stood up and did a touchdown dance. And I didn't want to take my shirt off and cheer because of the preceding rooftop foot chase, nor the slipshod action choreography. Elba is just really charming. This presents a problem since The Take is just really lousy. Co-writer/director James Watkins, The Woman in Black, Eden Lake, and Andrew Baldwin make Breyer an indestructible jerk who answers to no one, and is generally as cuddly as a cactus. This isn't just a matter of haphazard characterization and dialogue. The whole film is designed to make you see Breyer as a messianically impervious ugly American, the only person who can stop a group of dissembling criminals from unleashing chaos on an unsuspecting Paris. Breyer teams up with Michael and Zoe Navali, Charlotte Le Bon, an Occupy-style protester who becomes a reluctant terrorist, to stop a shadowy group that manipulates working-class protesters in order to create a diversion for their covert crimes. Breyer's enemies do everything to rouse a mob, From filming fake footage of a policeman beating a foreign suspect to actively inciting protests using anonymous-style viral videos. Michael and Zoe are both hapless victims of circumstance and therefore innocent. Briar is therefore the only one smart and capable enough to stop the baddies, as he explains to Michael when he complains, "I thought we were a team," and Briar sneers, "Sorry, you're not Ivy League." It gets worse. Briar is needlessly brutal, like when he snaps one crook's arm and tosses him aside in order to dispatch the next black hat-wearing thug. He tells Zoe, "I don't wanna hurt you," but only after he punches her in the gut after disarming her. I repeat, he disarms a knife-wielding suspect, and then punches her in the gut a second later. You might want to excuse Briar by claiming that he's just reacting in the heat of the moment. Well, how about the critical confrontation where he shoots one of his allies, who at the time is being held captive by a baddie, in order to preemptively take away his adversary's bargaining chip? "Now what?" Briar growls. Again, I almost ran into the street and high-fived the nearby hookah bar's patrons. But I didn't, thankfully. Elba is cool enough to make steering with one hand while dodging a hail of bullets look feasible. He has an aura of implacable cool that you want in inexplicably suave Cro-Magnon men of action types, the kind that Bruce Willis or Sean Connery made their careers playing. But do you really want to cheer a hero whose allies are essentially overgrown children who only slow him down? Hell, why would you want to root for anyone in a movie where Occupy-ish protesters are treated as clueless pawns, and the only person strong enough to save the world is a mean-spirited American? The Take, originally titled Bastille Day, is the kind of cynical entertainment that will leave you feeling like a mark. It's an icky wish-fulfillment narrative. Watch the big strong American, played by a Brit, save the day when the ineffectual French police can't do anything. See him blow past his questioning superiors and get results despite their warnings. Cheer him on as he operates completely without oversight, just like James Bond, only he punches women in the stomach and then tells them, "I don't wanna hurt you." Somewhere, Ian Fleming is blushing furiously. The only good thing that can be said about The Take is that its creators aren't fully committed to their scenario's more lamentably chauvinistic ideas. I can't recommend Elba's performance because it left me feeling cheap and used. Elba's magnetic physical presence delivers so much without doing much of anything. But his fans deserve so much better than a couple of dumb quips and a little ultra-violence. What do you mean, you wanted original? There's the opening scene, all 2 minutes of it, featuring a naked blonde walking down the steps of Paris Sacré-Cœur, to the amazement of the crowd and the delicious disgust of a pair of passing nuns. She is there to provide distraction as brazen pickpocket Michael Mason, Richard Madden, works the crowd. Perhaps this is a subtle tipping of the hat to the fact that July 14th, the day celebrated in France as Bastille Day, is also, elsewhere, National Nude Day. After all, it surely couldn't be that so prestigious a director as James Watkins thought, "How do we rustle up a little easy notoriety for the film?" and some bright spark came up with the idea of kicking off with more titillation than Bond ever dared. Thereafter, though, the film plumbs every cliché in the buddy movie handbook. Sean Briar, Idris Elba, is the maverick CIA operative transferred to Paris after going off-piste in Baghdad. We first meet him being roasted by soulless by-the-book bureaucrat Tom Luddy, Anatole Yusuf, and being given one last chance, just so long as he behaves himself, by Station Chief Karen Dacker, Kelly Riley. This resolve lasts about as long as it takes for Mason to steal the wrong bag from naive political activist Zoe Naveley, Charlotte L. E. Bone, and, abandoning it in the wrong place, wrong time, put himself in the frame as a heartless irresponsible terrorist. While French police flounder, Briar tracks Mason to his digs in approximately 5 minutes flat. There follows rooftop pursuit, CF Skyfall and Taken 2, car chases and plenty of bone-cracking violence, as Briar takes down anyone and everyone who gets in his way. After mutual sparring, Mason convinces Briar that he really isn't a terrorist, but actually a feckless amoral coward who also happens to be the world's greatest pickpocket. The two set off together to track down Navali, as an increasingly alarmed Luddy squeaks into his radio that Briar is breaking the rules again. Briar hangs up, and the stage is set for a head-to-head with good guy turned bad, Victor Gamio's, Jose Garcia. Because yes, minor spoiler alert, the bad guys turn out to be good guys, a team of French Uber cops known as Response Rapide, gone rogue. Those you expect to die do so, and pretty much in the order and manner you would expect. Even the final showdown between Briar, Mason, and the real brains of the bad guy outfit is carbon copy of many a similar showdown. Absolutely not. Because let's face it, almost every action movie nowadays borrows from every other action movie, and this one happens to be done incredibly well. There's drive, passion, wit, and a tightness to the direction and storytelling that puts many a similar movie to shame. Idris Elba creates a new and sufficiently different hero that, should he want it, clearly lays the foundation for a sequel and an ongoing franchise. Though interestingly, oddly, this film, for me, laid to rest any claim Elba might have to the role of James Bond, for there is a lightness, almost balletic quality to the Bond role that doesn't quite fit with Elba's screen-dominating presence. That's not to diss Elba, not at all. Merely to observe that he has power and qualities that would be wasted, would not fit the dapper, sharp-suited Bond frame. Richard Madden is an excellent foil to his brute, bear-like force, and the introduction of a third party, Charlotte L.E. Bone, to the usual dyad works better than well. Meanwhile, would that other similar films boasted villains of the caliber of Jose Garcia? Those of a nervous disposition may question the subject matter and timing. Is it brave or incredible bad taste to bring out a story that kicks off with a bomb atrocity in the heart of Paris so soon after the events of 2015? Or to preview it just one day after similar atrocities in Belgium? I confess to genuinely conflicting emotions about that. But then, US directors have happily carried on blowing up large parts of US real estate for the sake of dramatic impact. In 2013, for instance, terrorists took down the White House, ultimate symbol of all that is American. Not once, but twice, White House down and Olympus has fallen, while terrorist mayhem was doubled up with the mass extermination of world leaders and blowing up of well-known UK landmarks in this year's London has fallen. Bastille Day is not some crass imposition of US action movie transposed to the streets of Paris. Behind the film sits a number of production companies, led by Studio Canal, a major French-based production and distribution company. Several of the key roles have been handed out to French A-listers, as opposed to US actors stumbling through French lines with a dubious mock French accent. Toward the end there is a climax that is quintessentially French, and absolutely right for a film that invokes the history of the Bastille, a storming of a major public monument by the people, a most un-American acknowledgement that when those in authority fall down on the job, it is time to take to the barricades. For this review, let's put aside the questionable taste in releasing a film, something meant to be a piece of action popcorn entertainment, about terror attacks in Paris less than 6 months after the terrorist attacks that rocked the city. In Bastille Day, Richard Madden, Game of Thrones, plays an American pickpocket in Paris running away from everything, mostly himself as we're expositionally told, who finds himself in a bad situation when he lifts the wrong bag, a bag with a bomb in it. When it explodes, a CIA agent new to the city, Sean Briar, Idris Elba, is hot on his heels. Briar is reckless, a loose cannon who doesn't play by the rules and works on hunches, his cliched character just told us in dialogue in the opening scenes. He'll do whatever it takes to find out who's responsible and stop the threatened next explosion. This mismatched pair will have to work together to track down the real bombers and uncover a plot that goes all the way to the top. This serviceable thriller acts primarily as a showcase for its two leads. There's no doubt about the talent of Elba, and the film does little for him but allow him to make a strong case for how easily he could slip into the shoes of James Bond. This role gives him little to work with in terms of character depth, but it does allow him to show off his physical side and demonstrate that he can carry a film. For Madden it's a more important role, and as someone who's transitioning from TV to movies, it's a decent starting point. He's cultivating a new image away from being the boring Stark brother, trying on new personas, trying to show range. And he does fine. He shows that he's got promise, that he can quip, can fight, can, almost, hold an American accent for a whole film. Although not on the same level, he almost reminds viewers of a young Matt Damon in Ocean's 11, and not just because they play practically the same character. Speaking of Matt Damon, Bastille Day plays like a lighter, less well-made version of the other JB of action movies, Jason Bourne. While there are some smart lines and a few laughs, the script is often wooden, weakly defining characters and their motivations, and let down with dialogue like "release the hashtags." Interestingly, Bastille Day's writer Andrew Baldwin will pen the sequel to the Jeremy Renner Bourne spin-off. The film is also let down by the pedestrian direction of James Watkins, who previously helmed the similarly middling films The Woman in Black and Eden Lake. It's not bad, just not visually interesting, gripping, or in any way different to 100 other passable action movies. There are some nicely staged action scenes, including a rooftop foot chase and a well-coordinated fight in the back of a moving van, but it's guilty of one of the gravest modern action movie sins: too many cuts during fights. The most acclaimed action movies of the last few years, like John Wick, have succeeded in part by letting the fights flow, allowing the physicality of the performers to shine. There's potentially interesting territory to be explored in the film's plot: exploitation of anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim sentiment, false flag operations, American spying and involvement on foreign soil, but unfortunately the film is not as smart as it thinks it is. It ends up being a mash of cliches, focusing on the idea of an insider heist, one that's been liberally lifted from films where it's been done better, and relying on the majority of characters becoming incredibly inept in order for everything to work out. The film also fails to take advantage of its Gallic setting, relegating Paris to a nothing backdrop, something that can't be helped by being directed by a Brit and having Americans as the heroes, well, Brits pretending to be Americans. For some reason I was psyched about this title, and now having seen the film I can't but help to be a little disappointed by it. It's not bad, but it's not really good either. So first let me go into the good elements of this film. The pacing. It's consistent and fast enough. You won't get the chance to get bored. The action is adequate and entertaining enough, but nothing special, so don't get your hopes up if you were expecting something exciting. Although it does look like the main characters did most of their stunt work themselves, which is something I can appreciate. And this brings me to the main draw of the film, Idris Elba. As far as I can recall, I have never seen him performing badly, and in this film it's no different. But it has to be said that this is clearly an Elba light, only bringing what is minimally needed and nothing more. One other reason why I looked forward to this film was Richard Madden. All he wanted was to be king in the North. I thought Richard Madden as Robb Stark was one of the most likable characters in Game of Thrones, and was very unhappy with the events concerning him. Damn you, George R.R. Martin. BTW, if you still want justice to be done, check out Sharknado 3, where Martin gets what he deserves. Therefore I looked forward to seeing him on the screen again, and I can't say that it was an entirely successful reunion. He is playing a young con artist who gets wrapped up in a predicament involving CIA, the French police and a group of terrorists. I will spare you the story because it's been done a million times already. No point repeating it. But get this, they made his character an American. So suddenly the Scot needs to talk with an American accent, and it is completely mystifying. Why? Because Richard Madden can't pull it off. It distracted me so much that it took a while for me to get warmed up to his character. There is absolutely no significant reason why his character needs to be American. He easily could have been Scottish, French, or whatever. It would not have mattered a thing. Bad decision on part of director James Watkins. Actually, it also becomes clear that his role could have been played by anyone. Apart from him being a con artist with some tricks up his sleeve, there is nothing special about him. This also is the fault of James Watkins, who has written the screenplay. He should have given Michael Mason, Richard Madden, something that would make for interesting dynamics between him and Elba's character Sean Breyer. There is very little to no chemistry between Richard and Elba. Mostly because of the lack of characterization and lack of proper bonding moments. Bastille Day stars Idris Elba, Richard Madden, Kelly Riley, and is directed by James Watkins. Premise of this one follows an American CIA agent in France, who tries to uncover those responsible for a bombing, and in his search for answers he comes across a skilled thief who may have clues leading to many layers of corruption. This film's wide theater release was set back on multiple occasions due to the horrific real-life terrorist attacks in France, and given the subject matter, the unfortunate irony was too much, and in good taste the decision was obvious not to show this one in theaters. I'm a big fan of Idris Elba, and his being in the lead was what drew me to this action flick. He has been in big movies, but as an action lead I was curious how he would do. I had expected him to do just fine, and he definitely did. He was great in this film. He felt the part of a leading star in his own film, and his performance was extremely likable. He was able to pull off all the action scenes, his fight sequences were all believable, and I certainly think he will have a bright future as the action hero lead if he wants it. The problem was, Elba was the best thing about this film, by a wide mark. The rest of the cast members were good for the most part. Kelly Riley was very strong in her performance, but one that was minimal in screen time to leave a real impact. Madden was serviceable in the co-star role. He was effective for what the character needed, but didn't feel like he made the most of it. Ellie Bond's performance felt hindered by overacting at times, but such lack of depth in her character didn't help explain some of her decision-making, and made her hard to connect with. The story had some issues, some conveniences, and was not as intricate of an espionage action film as I was hoping for. In the end, it turned out to be simply an action film with an espionage filter on it. The plot had some potential, but it was overly neat, a little too embellished at times, and did convey a poor political message in how the Americans were used in this story, but in a way they don't land fully, because the simple action film this was, kind of softens the impact. If I was French, however, and watched this movie, I wouldn't really like how my country was portrayed and how another country would have to send people in to clean up. But for the action film this was, there were some good sequences with Elba shining, there were some nice chase scenes, and they definitely helped pass the time. The direction and cinematography was very good at times. Some of the outside sequences were nicely shot and will pull you into them. The fight sequences had their moments, but they all leaned towards slight over-editing. There were times I wished I was watching from different angles, which made the camera feel a split second slower than the action it was filming. The story again just takes too long to develop for the number of layers it had. There could have been a swifter pace that wouldn't have lingered in the second act like it did. The plot could have been much more impactful if the filler scenes weren't so routine, with a lot of character dynamics and scenes we have already seen done before. It was a decent film though, and hopefully its mediocrity will not overshadow a very capable performance from Elba. It is, however, definitely worth a one-time watch for sure, with some fun to be had. Idris Elba plays reckless and irresponsible American CIA operative Sean Breyer, who is one step ahead of the French police in getting to the bottom of a fatal terrorist bombing in Paris. The apparent bomber is ne'er-do-well pickpocket Michael Mason, Richard Madden, Game of Thrones, Cinderella, who gets more than he bargains for when he snatches the wrong bag from bomb mule Zoe, Charlotte L.E. Bone, The 100-Foot Journey. Teaming up as an unlikely duo, the two chase around, mostly drab, Paris locations to uncover the plot, pursued by well-connected terrorists, led by Rafi Bertrand, Thierry Goddard, who actually have a much greedier ulterior motive. There is really very little going for this film. The film is an uneasy mishmash of the plots from Die Hard and Perm, any one of 5 recent Liam Neeson movies, laced with elements of Bourne. It all never quite gels into a satisfactory whole. Not wishing to be controversial, but given Idris Elba's undoubted star quality, he should only really need to play to his potential to get a well-deserved Oscar nomination this year. Unfortunately, this is not the film that delivers him the material to show that, and he spends most of the film saying little, in a strangely hackneyfied US accent, and looking broodingly reckless and irresponsible. Richard Madden fares little better, trying to wield some well-worn buddy cop comedy lines that are neither convincing nor particularly funny. Raffi Bertrand, Thierry Goddard, ends up looking like an uglier version of Ricky Gervais. I expect a retweet of this review from #RickyGervais for that, which is a bit difficult to get past to take his character seriously. Giving a much better performance is the very attractive Charlotte L. E. Bone, who is by far the best thing in the film. Clearly not the filmmaker's fault, but the movie, with a delayed release for obvious reasons, is a little too close to real-life comfort given the Paris bombings of November 2015. I suspect that as a result the bombing scene was probably edited down somewhat from its original cut in the interests of taste, which is no bad thing as it is an effective sequence for both the visuals and the sound mixing. The uneasy West vs Islam undertone throughout the film's story makes for queasy and unsettling viewing though. Where the film clunks to the floor is in the paint-by-numbers storyline and dialogue. The fact that the film stoops to an exploitative opening shot of a naked accomplice, a barely, no pun intended, credited Stephen Lard, is a sign of what's to come. Some of the scenes, particularly one with CIA boss Karen Dacker, Kelly Riley, Sherlock Holmes, Game of Shadows, are utterly predictable, and others, like a sniper attempt to shoot Mason, so jaw-droopingly inept as to quash any sense of tension. The finale, featuring a Bastille Day storming of the fascist banking citadel single-handedly by Zoe, like some modern-day Marianne, is pretty ludicrous. The special effects budget is funded by the same banker as London Has Fallen, i.e. inadequately, with some scenes such as the, otherwise exciting, rooftop chase lacking the authenticity of a Bond or a Bourne, and the use of what I thought was an obviously model helicopter at one point. Direction is by James Watkins, a Brit who did the passably chilling Woman in Black. I feel vaguely guilty for rating it the way I do, as the whole film smells of people trying really hard with the money they had available. Perhaps with a bigger budget it could have been better. A Scot, a Canadian, and a Londoner walk into the National Bank of France. Well, the Scot is actually American. And so is the Londoner. And the Canadian is French. And the bank is the Royal Naval College in Greenwich, which is in London. But this is the movies, so that stuff isn't important. Here's the question with these types of things. Do any of these revelations suddenly make a lot of sense, or do they sound like fun facts? If it's the former, the film has failed. If the latter, then congratulations are due all round. Success is mostly determined by how much we believe what we see on the screen, while knowing it's all illusion. Bastille Day is a mixed bag. The action scenes are really good. One of them is among the best I've ever seen. Small space fight scenes are thrilling and fun to watch, and man does this have a belter. The plot is also pretty interesting. It morphs several times in natural ways. Shocks are shocking, and drama isn't hammed to high heaven. It also uses Paris very responsibly for a blockbusting American heroes abroad type film. Unlike Mission Impossible, where everything always happens as close as possible to tourist landmarks which surely pay for the screen time by the frame. We're shown only as much as the plot demands, and since it mostly happens indoors there's no gratuitous grabbing here. The number of French actors used is another strength, crucial in fact, to ensure the world of the film feels three-dimensional. Even though the speaking cast is kept small, the viewer doesn't notice. Speech is controlled well and not allowed to get flabby, nor the French cast minimized for convenience sake. So, a glittering success? Not entirely. Richard Madden is great as swab pickpocket Michael, believable as a suspect on the run, and amusingly boyish during the buddy cop phase, but as a result kind of lost as a character. He's so malleable you suspect it was written that way to save hiring another actor. Idris Elba is solid as rogue agent Acton Man Sean Breyer, a bit lumbering maybe, but that's his style. That Luther was no whippet is what made him so intimidating. Fast minds can outmaneuver fast bodies. The problem is his American accent. Because the character is a straight man who speaks very slowly, every word has to be pronounced. He says wallet the way a penguin feeds its chicks. From deep in his bowels it projectiles down the collective throats of the audience. Elba appears to compute the accent is real time. Whether the writing or directing deserves the blame is a mystery. Conveniently, mail sharing this opinion can be sent to James Watkins, who fulfilled both roles. It definitely isn't Idris Elba's fault. You'd feel the same way after watching him dispatch highly trained bad guys for 90 minutes. Perhaps every American actor was ill at the time of casting. CIA higher-ups Karen and her deputy Tom are also played by Brits. Bastille Day, then, is a true action film, well shot, exciting to watch, let down by a few odd choices. It packs a lot of social comment to boot and stays clear French tropes despite the temptation of the setting. That it falls into countless American ones instead is mystifying, desperate even. Watkins is British too. Paris is a city on edge after suffering a spate of terrible terrorist attacks, and it would seem it doesn't take a lot for it to be tipped over. Michael Mason, Richard Madden, is a highly adept pickpocket, and after a very successful night plundering the pockets of the city's unsuspecting, he can't resist one final flutter. It's a deadly mistake. When he steals what at first appears to be a luxury handbag, he couldn't have known that its contents a bomb would make him Paris's most wanted man. When the bomb explodes, killing 4 people, a manhunt for Mason is set in place. A CIA cover team led by Sean Breyer, Idris Elba, is charged with finding the American before the French do. But, all is not as it seems. The true terrorists are at large, and a carefully planned campaign that exposes existing racial and political tensions is being capitalized on as a diversionary tactic. Breyer finds the target of his manhunt. But, convinced that there is more to this than meets the eye, he and Mason set about on a mission to find the true terrorists before a planned Bastille Day attack takes place. Bastille Day is a slick action thriller that utilizes some of the contemporary narratives surrounding modern terrorism, asking its audience to question our willingness to make quick assumptions. It begins well, and the playful repartee between Elba and Madden as unlikely partners in crime makes for entertaining viewing. Unfortunately, just as the setup is about to pay off, the wheels start to fall off and soon this well-laid plot enters car crash territory. As far as action films go, the raised expectations of the first half of the film arguably heighten the disappointment of the cliched finale. Elba is clearly one of this generation's most gifted actors. Is it time to raise his name as Bond once more? In the hard-hitting TV series Luther, he showed us how complex and engaging he can be. He needed more of that caliber of writing to take this character further, but if you're a fan of CIA-style thrillers, and are willing to forgive a little Hollywood indulgence, you will find easy enjoyment in Bastille Day. Hello Real-Time Dublin. It's Adam, the guy who used to write more, and feels bad about his absence. Work has been beyond busy and it's been eating into my drinking time severely. Well, actually it's been eating into my hangover time, which is when I do most of my writing. But I'm back writing and drinking and being bitter, oddly charming, and cynical, and all of the other characteristics that seem to have brought some success to this site. We do have some really cool stuff on the schedule though, with a guest writer dropping in an astonishing article on Mulholland Drive next week and a totally objective look at Civil War falling out of Tony over the next few days. To the matter at hand. Last week, at the behest of the girl I was with, I saw Bastille Day. A movie that looked, on the outside, to have a lot of potential. The thing is, I'm slowly coming around to Idris Elba. I loved him and all 58 words of dialogue he had in Thor. I think he has a cool voice. Other than giving Luthor a fighting chance to hold my burnt out attention, I haven't seen much else of him. So I went into this on the fence about him and was promptly kicked off it. He's one of those jack of all trades, master of none artists who is branching out just that little bit too far to really nail down anything solid in my book. The man is a DJ, a singer, in shows, movies, stage pieces, pick one and get good at it. With his rise to stardom and his tough guy roles, it's no surprise the internet is fangirling themselves over the thought of him being the new Bond when Daniel Craig hangs up his PP7 and his Tom Ford suit. So with that in mind, when I saw him playing an CIA agent in a spy/action thriller, I thought to myself, right, okay, this is the audition. Much like Daniel Craig in Layer Cake, the role that landed him the famous 3 digits in my mind, I assumed this was him flexing his one-man army capabilities on camera to show the world why he deserves a tuxedo and an exploding watch. The basic plot actually follows a method of storytelling perfected by Matt Stone and Trey Parker of South Park of, this happens, but this happens, therefore this happens, as the sequence of events that fuels the movie, rather than the more childish and one-dimension this and then model prevalent in most popcorn flicks these days. The plot unfolds as a pickpocket living in France steals the handbag of a volunteer terrorist bomber who is having second thoughts on her mission to blow up a government building, after taking the phone and money from the bag and wandering back down the road to continue his life as the handsome and badly cast Richard Madden. The bomb concealed in the bag explodes after he dumps it in a heavily populated tourist area, becoming now the main and confused suspect in a terror attack the day before Bastille Day. Cut to a CIA operative, under the guidance of a captain who's had enough of this maverick agent and stuck her neck out for him and every other superior officer stereotype you can think of, setting out to catch the suspect. After a gripping chase scene and a rather entertaining prove-yourself-to-me pissing match between the two, Edra's character believes his story or circumstantial innocence, and it's at this point that all professionalism of the agent goes out the window as they set out to get to the bottom of this. Unfolding a terror plot, a mole operation, a terror group in France, and even a bank robbery, the two embark on what is essentially a buddy cop story similar to Bulletproof by The Thing That Got Possessed by modern-day Adam Sandler. Now, it actually starts quite strong with a very well-paced plot that unfolds into a pleasant snowballing shitstorm that is actually believable. Act 1 lays the groundwork for a complex and fun cat-and-mouse game. Then it's as if the writers stopped, looked at each other and yelled through their beards and soy lats, "We need more cheese up in this thing." It then proceeds to do a 180 on the nice although overdone character story they presented and take a bumpy descent down the template model. Every stereotype in the book comes out, and despite one scene very similar to that of Ocean's 11, it just takes the safe route to a Wednesday night empty screen flick. Just when you think it won't take any more of the safe and boring bets, it takes templates right out of every other heist/standoff movie, ever, and just becomes a film that, if you blurred the faces of the main character, could literally be any other from that genre. Just for fun, I thought I'd rattle off a quick scorecard of stereotypes for the spy/cop movie/one-man army genre that this film uses. Against the beautiful backdrop of Paris, sleight-of-hand genius Michael Mason, Richard Madden, works the streets as a pickpocket, taking specialist requests from designer watches to Japanese passports. One evening, whilst enjoying a coffee and cigarette at a street cafe, Michael notices a woman having an argument on her phone, and while she's distracted, swipes her handbag in the blink of an eye. Unaware of the ticking bomb that's hidden within the bag, Michael takes the valuables and dumps the bag in the middle of the street. Caught on CCTV, Michael becomes one of France's most wanted for acts of terrorism, which is when we are introduced to our hero, Sean Breyer, Idris Elba, a CIA surveillance agent working in France. We learn that Breyer is somewhat of a loose cannon, often refusing to obey orders and frequently does things his own way. Tasked with the reasonably simple mission of tracking down Michael and bringing him in for questioning, Breyer sets out to find his man, but discovers that the terrorist threat and Michael's involvement are not as straightforward as it seems. Marking this his third feature film, director James Watkins takes a different route from his previous horror thriller Eden Lake and slow atmospheric burner The Woman in Black. Packing action and suspense into his latest flick, Watkins manages to create something which could sit alongside the likes of The Bourne and the Transporter films with its conspiracy plots and action sequences. It may not be as slick or have an enormous budget, but Watkins provides well choreographed action, filmed in a cohesive and very watchable manner. The fight scenes are pretty awesome and very entertaining to watch, One chase scene in particular between Briar and Michael is filmed over Parisian rooftops and really has the ability to place the viewer amongst the action. Idris Elba employs much of his Luther character for this role, embodying the dark and mysterious qualities he plays so well. However, as Briar is part of the CIA, Elba does have an American accent which I personally found a bit distracting, as it always seemed to slip into that London accent we're all familiar with. That said, Elba is good in this type of role, beefed up and badass. There could have been a bit more witty repartee between Briar and Michael perhaps, as the film almost built up to moments of humor but never quite got there. Richard Madden as Michael is good, he plays the part well, but despite being a key figure in the plot frequently falls into the background, leaving Elba to take a majority of the limelight, and deservedly too. There is one scene where Michael works a bar to an almost domino-like effect. While not entirely plausible, it was fun to watch. Kelly Riley plays Karen Dacker, Briar's boss within the CIA, also using an American accent but with much more believability than Elba. Canadian Charlotte L.E. Bone plays Zoe Navely, a woman who is involved with fundamentalists and finds herself mixed up with the wrong people and whose bag gets stolen by Michael. Bastille Day is an easy watch with plenty of action to keep the pace moving throughout the film. There are also a few twists and turns which some might find predictable but might come as a surprise to others. It's a relief that for a change the focus is all on the action without any irritating love interests or side stories getting in the way. In fact, there are very few moments in which you might ordinarily find yourself shouting at the screen. There is potential to link the content of the film with recent current events, but I don't think that it should be an overriding factor when viewing it. Bastille Day is fairly simple, straightforward, and watchable. If it wasn't for its predictability I would have scored it slightly higher, but as it is, the third act came as no surprise. There is a lot more which could be read into this film, but for what it is, an action film that doesn't require much thought starring Idris Elba, it is pretty good. It's about time that Idris Elba took center stage in a big screen action film. And if there's one thing that stands out during Bastille Day, it's not the eerie real-world parallels. The film, about a terrorist attack in Paris, was actually shot before the events of November 2015, or the brace of British actors speaking with American accents. It's that Mr. Elba is very good at taking center stage in a big screen action film. But the film doesn't open with him. Instead, we're flung straight into the center of France's capital while Richard Madden's Michael sneaks through a throng of distracted Parisians and pickpockets the lot of them. Madden is playing against type as a sarcastic street criminal, but enough of his Prince Charming / Rob Stark charisma shines through and urges you to root for him. It's a fun little opening, but in a film with terrorism at its heart, of course this lightheartedness can't last. After a bomb goes off, Michael accidentally finds himself as the prime suspect. Enter Mr. Elba as Agent Briar of the CIA, a moody monolith of a man with the intimidating shape of a brick outhouse and a gruff personality to match. Elba totally embodies this unhappy and often violent character, to the point that you'll end up forgetting how charming an actor he often is. That's no small feat. Briar is sent after Michael and a thrilling series of chases ensues. Taking cues well from Paul Greengrass's Bourne films, director James Watkins finds frenzied and frenetic ways to frame this pursuit. A rooftop running segment is the highlight, providing some thumping thrills before the pair finally unite and talk it out. Up until this point, Bastille Day fires on all cylinders. Impressive action, strong performances, and a nice little slice of intrigue emanate from the first act. Unfortunately, the film gets a bit wobbly after its leads are brought together. They work up a decent rapport and as a pair become highly watchable, but sadly the other strands of the movie aren't. The main villains are particularly weak, with an overly convoluted plan and not particularly clear motivations. And, on top of this, the script totally misrepresents how social media works as a way to give them unrealistic levels of power. Release, the final, hashtag, is a standout line, but probably not in the way that the writers intended. It's a shame that the film devolves like this, because Bastille Day sets itself up as a pacey thrill ride very well, but ends with generic action film beats and not much payoff to its promise. Thankfully, Madden and Elba have enough shared charisma to keep you interested. Briar and Michael's bickering provides a few laughs, and Charlotte L.E. Bond's Zoe, a local who ends up assisting the authorities, brings a lot of charm to the table as well. And Watkins proves himself a highly capable action director, the kind you'd like to see given a bigger budget in future. By the time that Bastille Day finishes, though, you'll more than likely wish you could watch this great cast together in a film with a tighter script. Set in Paris, a con man, Michael, Richard Madden, steals a bag belonging to Zoe, Charlotte L.E. Bone, which unknowingly to him contains a bomb. When the device detonates in the city center, CIA agent Sean Briar, Idris Elba, is put in charge of tracking Michael down. Idris Elba and Richard Madden play off against each other very well. Elba as the super serious Briar and Madden as the immature conman have great chemistry together. Elba is blessed with a natural charisma that makes him easy to watch even when armed with the most underwritten of characters. Whilst Richard Madden holds his own as an entertaining pickpocket, with a few humorous moments. Neither of the pair completely master the American accents, but we're also not in Dick Van Dyke territory, so it doesn't become too off-putting. The action is suitably slick and steadily directed, though there are a lot of rapid cuts which threaten to break the cohesion of the action. The camera does remain steady though, allowing most of the fight scenes to remain coherent. The style seems evocative of the Bourne Ultimatum and Taken, without ever excelling beyond either of these modern action favorites. The pickpocketing scenes are presented stylishly and are entertaining, especially compared to something like Focus from last year that made Will Smith's Thief seem somehow superpowered. However, despite being superior in these circumstances, Bastille Day constantly seems to be an imitation of other popular features released in the past few years without ever developing into something more unique. Setting the movie in Paris against the backdrop of the current tensions following the terrorist attacks is a weird choice for a film that seemingly doesn't want to delve into such a highly divisive issue. The conflicted atmosphere of the city's multicultural classes is extorted by the film's plot, but is never explored beyond the simplistic. Kelly Riley is wasted as one of Briar's co-workers, in a part that could have been portrayed by a box with the words "unimportant character" written on it. To have such a talented performer like Kelly Riley in such a pointless role is mind-boggling. Whilst Anatole Youssef, of Boardwalk Empire fame, is Briar's superior, the one who likes to do things by the book and hates Briar for being such a loose cannon. Youssef is little more than a cliché obstacle whose main service to the narrative is to recite expositional backstory on other characters. As a whole, Bastille Day is little more than a run-of-the-mill actioner, with nods to Taken, Focus, and even Die Hard. It struggles to find its own path. Elba and Madden do a fine job together, but there isn't much to either of their characters worth thinking about. If you're a fan of action, then this may be something worth checking out, but be aware that there isn't anything revolutionary about this Bastille Day. With an unsurprisingly delayed release following last year's Paris attacks, action thriller Bastille Day tells the story of reckless and irresponsible CIA field agent Briar, Idris Elba, tasked with investigating a terror plot on the city. Going against orders, so frequently that the catchphrase of the film must be an infuriated cry of Briar, he joins forces with master pickpocket Michael Mason, Richard Madden, who unwittingly becomes involved after stealing a bag containing far more than a wallet. With growing unrest in the city and distrust between American and French agencies, the unlikely duo must find the bag's original owner, and uncover the real perpetrators of the violence before the city's Bastille Day celebrations begin. Written by Andrew Baldwin, who has been announced as screenwriter for the next Bourne film, there are some genuinely thrilling twists. If you want to keep the element of surprise, you absolutely shouldn't watch the trailer, which gives away most of the major plot points. Though there are some interesting elements of police corruption, power play between international government agencies, and the potential of the internet for rallying people into a mob mentality, this is certainly an action film, rather than a thriller. Directed by James Watkins, The Woman in Black, Eden Lake, the fast-paced film keeps up its momentum well, taking full advantage of the on-location shoot by giving a real sense of the city's various arrondissements. The bomb blast outside a metro station is difficult to watch without seeming gratuitously violent, and the chase scenes, including a realistically messy dash over rooftops, use the location to great effect. By minimizing flashy CGI set pieces in favor of gritty action and a strong cast, the film is far more successful than the likes of London Has Fallen, despite its low budget. There's an interesting supporting cast including Kelly Riley as CIA handler Karen Dacker, and Jose Garcia as the smooth-talking chief of police, but this is undoubtedly Elba's film. Like an American version of Luther, Elba dominates the action, leaving Madden struggling to keep up with his charisma. With an increasingly far-fetched plot, Bastille Day occasionally leans too close to B-movie territory, but luckily Watkins' direction keeps the action on course with the help of Tim Maurice Jones' stunning cinematography. Unfortunately, Bastille Day doesn't quite have the personality or tension of the many buddy cop action films that preceded, but there are some brilliantly fast-paced action scenes and the reassuring sense that it doesn't take itself too seriously. The film may not perfect, but it is thoroughly entertaining, proving once again the star quality of Idris Elba, and the undoubtedly huge potential of relative newcomers Baldwin and Watkins. I really do love a good action movie. Who doesn't? Okay, so there are a few of you out there who aren't that keen on them, but that's cool. I grew up in, arguably, the age of the greatest. My younger years saw me trundling off to the local theater to see such classics as Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Big Trouble in Little China, and a whole slew of others, most of which starred either Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or Chuck Norris. Those were certainly the glory days for the avid action fan. So, how about these days? To be honest, I don't think we'll ever see a time like the 80s again, but I certainly don't think we are at a loss for great beat MUPs, shoot MUPs, and slash or blow M-ups. Since the beginning of the new millennium, we've had the likes of the Bourne movies, Mad Max, Fury Road, Man on Fire, Taken, and a whole lot of superhero outings to scratch that thirst for action itch. While they are certainly great, I wouldn't call them the greatest, except for Mad Max, Fury Road, which was absolutely awesome. That shouldn't come as a surprise since it is a continuation of an 80s masterpiece. One thing I am sure about when it comes to the modern-day action movie is that there are a lot more disappointments than before. Whereas in the past the action centered around the characters, these days the characters are often lost amidst the action as studios and filmmakers strive for big screen, computer-generated, off-the-charts spectacle. It's hard to focus on a hero/heroine and his/her daring dose when there's an entire city collapsing around them amidst beautifully rendered smoke and flames. It sure looks pretty, but it makes me long for the days when John McClane, Martin Riggs, and Indiana Jones were what we focused on, not London toppling over into the Thames. Which brings us to the Take, or Bastille Day if you live outside the USA. Does this latest addition to the genre, from writer/director James Watkins, The Woman in Black, Eden Lake, go for the big and catastrophically beautiful, or does it bring things down to the streets where we can actually see and care for what's going on? Our story here centers on CIA agent Sean Breyer, Idris Elba, a truly morose individual who is just trudging through another in a long line of not particularly good days. He is the epitome of a man whose life is his job, and it is definitely not a happy one. When a bomb goes off in Paris killing 4 people, Breyer hits the streets in pursuit of the main suspect, American pickpocket Michael Mason, Richard Madden, who was caught on camera placing the bomb. Charged with cleaning up the mess as soon as possible so as to hide the fact that the CIA is snooping around on foreign soil, complications arise when Breyer discovers that Mason wasn't actually the bomber. He had snatched the bag containing the explosives from the real bomber, Charlotte L. E. Bone, and discarded it without knowing what was hidden inside, and the real culprits behind the attack come calling. With terrorist threats hanging over them, and citizens taking to the streets in protests centered around the nation's celebrations for Bastille Day. Briar and Mason are forced to team up and get to the bottom of what's really going on. And what is that exactly? Well, it may or may not be what you think. Now, I'm not going to run up to the roof and start proclaiming The Take to be the second coming of the action movie genre, but I gotta say this, I had a damn good time with this movie. This is the kind of action flick that just makes me want to hit somebody, in the good way, of course. At just a shade over 90 minutes, the action never lags, and what lovely action it is. The Take is definitely not a movie that has landmarks and office buildings falling down left, right and center. The action scenes are small scale, often playing out in close quarters. Hell, one of the best dust-ups actually takes place in the back of a police minivan. But what the movie lacks in scale, it more than makes up for with great fight choreography that is often brutal and real in its execution. There's no fancy martial arts or superhuman shenanigans here. The pummeling these guys give and take is down, dirty, and respects the laws of physics. The gunplay is aplenty, but again nothing that ventures into the unbelievable or laughingly preposterous. There are several chase scenes and, I must say, one of the highlights here was a foot chase across the Paris rooftops. There were moments during that pursuit where I was actually feeling nauseous. I'm not good with heights. Stellar camera work there, and it certainly conveyed a convincing sense of danger. I was wholly expecting either one of those guys to make like a pigeon carrying a kettlebell at any moment. And the movie had brains. Whether it's Briar hunting for clues, or Mason putting his exceptional pickpocketing skills to use for the cause, the filmmakers took the time to do things a bit more creatively rather than rely on time-worn tropes such as beating or bribing needed information out of low-level creeps. Nowhere is this more apparent than in a scene where Mason has to enter a bar full of toughs in search of an address. What follows is tense, funny, and so satisfying to watch. If they had gone with Briar just storming in and clobbering the hell out of everyone, which I'm sure would have had some entertainment value, it would have had nowhere near the same impact. Good job. Since we're talking about Briar and Mason, let's take some time to talk about the actors who are playing them. If well-orchestrated action is the key to this kind of movie, then casting is a close second. The best action movies have great leads who make the roles their own. That's why names such as Willis, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Russell, and Gibson carry such weight in the genre. They are damn good at what they do, even if one or two of them have faltered in their later years. Not just good, but believable. Idris Elba more than fits this bill. This man is not just a fine actor, he's a force of nature. An imposing figure who is usually sullen, mean-spirited, and dour, Sean Briar moves through this movie like a giant battering ram with fists and knees. He kicks down quite a few doors, and makes a couple of new ones as well. Once he knows what he has to do, nothing is going to stop him, except maybe the odd little old lady making her way down the stairs. Even in those lighter moments though, we can almost see the spring coiled up inside him straining to bust loose. Once the moment for politeness moves on, boing. There he goes again. The man can be a monster, with little or no time for niceties. Is it any wonder that when he asks a character, "Why did you run?" the answer he receives is, "Because you were chasing me." Have you seen yourself? Priceless. Elba is a master at being the strong silent type. He conveys more with a raised eyebrow, a sideways glance, or a snort than many other actors do with a monologue. He is a big man, and he knows how to use that physicality in a role such as this. We see his name a lot these days on the marquees and in the trades, and there's a good reason for that. He has a presence that demands attention, and if his role in this is any indication, he has a great future as an action star ahead of him. Richard Madden also deserves special mention for his portrayal of the pickpocket forced to buddy up with Elba. In these movies, the criminal paired with the hero is often relegated to being the comic relief, but not here. Michael Mason, in the beginning, is confident and suave when he's doing his thing, but after the bomb shatters his life, and even a little before, he becomes scared and small. He is terrified at where he has ended up, and spends much of the movie running, cowering, and doing his best not to get killed. It's only when his sticky-fingered talents come back into play that the old Mason re-emerges. Being famous for more regal roles, Robb Stark in Game of Thrones and the Prince in Cinderella, Michael Mason is a welcome departure for Madden. It shows his range as an actor, and he is a joy to watch whenever he is on the screen. The two of them together make a great team. As they walk off together at the end, we are left feeling that Mason has finally found the father figure we learned he never had, and Briar has finally found someone he doesn't want to kill, or at least beat to a pulp. They are, in fact, a beautiful couple. I would like to see more of them and their adventures down the road. The rest of the cast do their jobs well. I really liked Charlotte Lee Bone as the initial bomber, and Eric Ebwani was great as Michael's fence. The villains of the piece, who I won't mention because of plot twists, were also good and never went too over the top. Everyone kept their characters grounded, and the film is better for it. There are some shortcomings. After all, nobody's perfect. Some of the minor characters are a bit cliched, especially in the CIA office, hello, pain in the ass superior. A couple of the twists aren't really that surprising, the main villain becomes very familiar towards the end, shortcuts are taken with the story to keep the pace up, and one of my personal pet peeves rears its ugly head. And what exactly might that peeve be? Well, as I'm sure you know, often in these kinds of movies, the man on the run usually has his photo blasted all over the internet and on TV. Now, Richard Madden is a good-looking guy. That alone is going to have people giving him the once-over. However, he also happens to be a man blessed with a magnificent head of hair and a neatly trimmed beard and mustache. If I were him, the first thing I would do is grab my big razor and get rid of every strand of hair from my neck up. Does he do that? Nope. He wanders around Paris, a wanted terrorist, looking exactly like his picture. Man. Haven't you ever seen The Fugitive? If you're on the run, changing your appearance is the first order of business. Harrison Ford knew what to do, and you should too. Sigh. I know it's a nitpick, but these kinds of things do bug me. Either that or I'm really jealous of his hair. The Take is certainly not in the same league as Die Hard or Lethal Weapon, but as a fun action picture, it hits the nail on the head. It doesn't do anything new, but what it does do, it does well. Elba and Madden own the leads, the action has guts, the pickpocketing set pieces are great fun, the directing is tight, the camera is steady, a lot of people do care about that, there are laughs, the story zips along, nobody, on either side of the camera, does anything stupid, except for the hair, and in the end we are left wanting more. If you are a fan of big-scale carnage, you will probably be disappointed, but if you like your action lean and mean, you will be in for a treat. English director James Watkins has slowly built a compelling argument to seek out his films. As one of the writers on Little Seen My Little Eye, and helming the equally underseen thriller Eden Lake, which starred Michael Fassbender, Watkins also had a shot at mainstream horror with The Arguably Decent Woman in Black, a Daniel Radcliffe vehicle that delivered good chills in spite of a wonky plot. Bastille Day sees Watkins tackle what one might call an action thriller, although sadly the film lacks both in degree enough to warrant applause. Plot synopsis courtesy Wikipedia. On the eve of Bastille Day in Paris, Michael Mason, Richard Madden, a young American conman, steals a handbag containing a teddy bear. After disposing of the teddy bear, it explodes, killing 4 people. The French police tags Mason as a terrorist suspect and pursues him. Unknown to Michael, the explosion was actually set up by a select group in the French Interior Ministry as a decoy to make a $500 million digital transfer from a bank. While involved in a separate clandestine investigation in Paris, CIA agent Sean Briar, Idris Elba, discovers the truth behind the terrorist attack. The two men, on different sides of the law, then collaborate to find the group responsible for the attack. Given the state of terrorism in France these days, a film featuring a terrorist bombing plotline feels poorly timed, even though there's a fair chance Bastille Day has been on the cooker for a few years before the events of Nice rattled the world. Watching a film set in Paris with explosions and the ubiquitously omnipresent CIA doing their best to belittle French intelligence and French intelligence, see what I did there, almost feels uncomfortably close to reality, something I watched Bastille Day to escape, and although Watkins does a solid job giving the film's stunning tableau a widescreen fellatio session, the problematic aspects of both character and story amount to a film so benign and mediocre it makes me want to rewatch Taken, just to see a Paris thriller done right. Truth be told, Bastille Day's rapid cut, multi-angle action mantra is entirely wearying. Over-edited, poorly shot fight sequences, clunky transitions between scenes and several performances that utterly stink. Mary Riley, I'm looking at you. The film is all style and no delivery, a performance art piece filtered through a pop-modern hippity-hoppity crowd-pleasing veneer of washed-out colors and frenetic camera work. Watkins seems to be channeling Paul Greengrass's work on the Bourne films, with Richard Madden, Game of Thrones, Cinderella, looking befuddled by what he's scripted to do as a poor man's Jason Bourne, and Idris Elba, Pacific Rim, Marvel's Thor, bullocking his way through an undemanding role as hard-bitten CIA agent Breyer. Neither Breyer nor Madden's Mason are characters of note, about as well-rounded and developed as a piece of paper sitting at the bottom of my toilet. It doesn't help that Watkins works overtime not to develop them at all, offering paltry lip service to Breyer's past as a hard-ass rogue, and giving Madden even less. The script's attempts at generating tension through the terrorist angle is heavy-handed, but works in service of the story, no matter how presciently off-putting it is. Subterfuge and any attempt at subtlety is lost amid the shaky cam edginess and brusque patriotism on display here. Kinda weird how an American intelligence agency wouldn't share intel with the French in their own capital, but I guess logic and accuracy don't make for dramatic thrillers, right? Playing off instilled fears and subverting actual tragedies across the country, French set Bastille Day is a sub-par cobblestone baffled ride between arrondissements that jigsaws its way towards a conclusion that's as ham-fisted and bellaboured as you can imagine. Elba and Madden make unconvincing on-screen partners, Watkins' action chops need more polish, and the film's central plot owes more to Ocean's 11 than it does its pulp terrorism boilerplate genesis. Entertaining in the diverting manner Luc Besson's films have become, that is, chopsaki but entirely forgettable, there's not a lot to recommend about Bastille Day other than yet another style over substance shoot 'em up. A bomb goes off in Paris and a manhunt ensues. Believe it not, this is not a news headline but the plot of the latest action blockbuster starred Idris Elba, Bastille Day. Admittedly ballsy given the current security climate, but I guess when you can laugh or be entertained by such things you know the world is healing, getting stronger, and the terrorists are definitely not winning. On the eve of Bastille Day, France's biggest holiday and city-wide parade, a bomb goes off. Only the bomber is a naive wannabe anarchist trying to please her boyfriend, and the bomb is taken by clueless master pickpocket Michael Mason, Richard Madden, when the chaos erupts. His photo is plastered across the city, and a CIA cell operating without the French government's permission are on the case. But all isn't as it seems. With rogue agent Sean Breyer, Elba, tracking down the thief, the city is erupting into anarchy, fueled by social media and a grand puppet master behind the scenes. So who's the real bad guy? And what is he really up to? In the spirit of Taken, this is a raw, rough, no innocent bystander kind of action flick where everyone gets F'd up. Idris Elba is the perfect action star. He's big, beautiful, can deliver a line, and knows how to be scary when he wants to be. He and Madden work together beautifully as the good guy badass and the wisecracking innocent. So here's the niggle, Elba and his colleagues play American CIA agents. Madden's character is also American, yet none of them are American in real life. They are, in fact, all English. Last time I checked, Britain also have a spy agency, and their proximity to France makes it more likely and plausible that they'd actually be in Paris. This is also not an American production. So the mystery remains. As for the story and its extreme relevancy, it rings sadly true when the bad guys start screaming out hashtags to instigate more rage in the protesting mob. Forget Unfriended or The Duff, no movie showcases the true, real power of social media better than Bastille Day. Who would have thunk it? Great action, hot cast, good chemistry, witty dialogue, and a story to give you nightmares because it's all just a little too real. Now that's entertainment. Bastille Day, review starring Richard Madden, Idris Elba, Charlotte Le Bon, directed by James Watkins. Once the opening studio credits recede, Bastille Day begins in Sacré-Cœur, Paris, where descending from the steps is an almost entirely naked woman shot from every angle. There's a shot focusing on heels, her legs, her breasts, her backside, her front, and, of course, her smile, but the obvious question is, why? Well, to show the viewer how adroit the protagonist, played by Richard Madden, can be as a thief. Yes, but that doesn't explain why it appears to be the most complicated sequence in the film, a sequence which returns to remind the audience that she was, in fact, naked. Eventually, when the movie is over, the answer becomes abundantly clear: they're compensating for an action thriller that lacks any originality. Madden plays Michael Mason, an American in Paris, whose thievery has helped him get by from day to day. After stealing what supposedly was a bag containing a teddy bear and little else, unbeknown to him that the bear contained explosives planted by a terrorist group, Mason accidentally kills several Parisians in an attack that marks the beginning of a hostile city takeover led by an online group, in imitation of the real-life Anonymous. Mason is captured by CIA agent Sean Breyer, Idris Elba, and in order to clear his name, helps Breyer track down those responsible for the bombing. Credit should be given to Elba, who manages to show glimpses of charm in a character that has no personality. Elba regurgitates the cold, hard grimace of his TV character, Luther, but without any of the psychological afflictions that makes Luther an interesting figure. Yet Elba still manages to outshine his co-stars, who fail to bring strength to a lacking script. Once Madden and Elba are paired, the script tries to pull comedy out by awkwardly drawing on the buddy cop formula that never congeals with the overall gritty, dead serious tone of the film. By the time the final act commences, it becomes unavoidably apparent that Bastille Day is little more than an amalgamation of the third and fourth installments of the Die Hard franchise, but without any of the charm. In a nutshell, a lacking, unoriginal bore that is only deserving of a single viewing for the hardcore Idris Elba fans. Otherwise, skippable by everyone else. My take, frankly, I would watch anything with Idris Elba in it, no matter how the film looks like. The suave Brit is one of the few actors I am hopelessly biased about. In recent times, Idris Elba has been in Marvel films like Thor, The Dark World and Avengers: Age of Ultron, followed by his brilliant performance in last year's Netflix feature Beasts of No Nation, which triggered controversy when he was not nominated for an Oscar. Just this year, he had been in two films, Zootopia and The Jungle Book. However, in both films, we only hear his deep, imposing voice. Thinking about it, there are not enough action films with Idris Elba in it. Even though he has done some underserved parts in lazy films such The Gunman. But there should be more. With this film we finally see Idris Elba as a modern-day action hero, not far from the news that he is being touted to be the next James Bond. The constant debate around that has led to this film being treated like it's his audition for the role just because he waves a gun around and runs about for a bit. And if it were that easy, they would have cast just anyone. No, we need to treat this film on its own terms, as a slightly better than generic action thriller with hilariously out-of-touch opinions about how social media works. Director James Watkins' third film after relative horror films such as Woman in Black and Eden Lake jumps genres and enters an altogether more bone-crunching gear for this contemporary tale of terrorist intrigue. Together with Kingsman and Kick-Ass editor John Harris, They serve up set pieces in a bar and inside a truck at a thrilling pace, without you ever losing sight of what's going on, while presenting a rooftop chase with a low-key vibe and immediate peril that's missing from most blockbusters today. Unfortunately, in the US, the film has been postponed indefinitely following last year's Paris attacks, but it sees our man play a lone wolf CIA agent tasked with preventing a terrorist strike in France on their national holiday of Bastille Day. The story follows CIA agent Sean Breyer, Idris Elba, who is a part of a surveillance team stationed in Paris. In other words, they are not allowed to intervene in the activities of the city. However, when a light-fingered master of distraction and pickpocket, Michael, Richard Madden, also American, mistakenly pilfers a bag containing a bomb destined to blow up the French Nationalist Party HQ but instead destroys a busy place of innocent civilians, he becomes suspect number one. Seeking to clear his name and solve a conspiracy that, predictably, goes way up in the Parisian police authorities, he and Breyer must work together to crack the case. The film gets off to a strong start. The plot is decent, and though the two leads have questionable on-screen chemistry, there are a few moments of gold that come out of their partnership. The plot itself is fairly simple, but the film is assembled in a way that makes everything look far more complicated than it actually is. Action mayhem breaks out at every turn, with impressively full-on stunt work, crashing chase scenes and lots of shootouts. It's a shame the script wasn't as clever as the plot, which was, for some parts, unpredictable, even though far-fetched. The plot twists from a terrorist crisis into an elaborate bank heist. It's loaded with unbelievable, cliched heroics, a French Revolution, hence the film's title, and some unnecessary violence that doesn't make sense. Bent cop seeking redemption in the form of millions of dollars, not euros oddly enough, because of losing fellow comrades in action, yet, he'll happily hang one of his own men. Despite the storyline being a bit unremarkable, there's crunchy enjoyment in Watkins' solid staging of the various set pieces, from a subborn rooftop chase sequence to a genuinely impressive, face-obliterating fight inside the back of a moving van. Madden meanwhile is fun to watch, with obvious care taken to show him lifting wallets and purses. His light-fingered thieving and practically clairvoyant ability to read a situation result in some slick sequences, even if it seems that everyone in France carries their valuables half sticking out of their pockets at all times. Director James Watkins has the good sense to play to its strengths, for a time. Filmed across Greater Paris in gritty locations like Gennevilliers and Barbes, it has the earthy visual palette of a Jason Bourne movie, and some of the stunt work to match. In the film's best action sequence, Breyer chases Mason across the rooftops of central Paris, sending loose tiles tumbling to the distant streets. Watkins just doesn't have a great script to work with. Screenwriter Andrew Baldwin throws in very thinly sketched xenophobic sentiment and a fuck the police anti-establishment riot whose basis is not explained at all, but the director shows real guile in choreographing high-speed chases and fight sequences that are done well. This film doesn't have the budget of some other high-profile action flicks, and it shows, in a good way. Everything is just a bit grittier, a bit dirtier. And with such villainous baddies, the filmmakers believe they are justified in killing off dozens of faceless henchmen. One dares to show a glimmer of a conscience, but that doesn't save him. The setup is intriguing, the cinematography is excellent, and though it is rather baffling that, despite casting two British stars, the two leads should be American, it's undeniably absorbing. Sadly, as time goes on, the film gets more run-of-the-mill. Gone are the spectacular early chase scenes and clever twists, but it's still all in good fun. Elba has ample opportunity to flex his action hero muscles. Idris Elba is as imposing and impressive as his voice was. When asked why he ran away, Mason quipped, "Don't you see how you look like?" Elba's Breyer was big, macho, tough, and scary. Anyone would have tried to run if he comes to get him. As an agent, Breyer was an independent-minded and reckless rouge to the chagrin of his CIA bosses, but to the delight of the audience. Idris Elba is well suited to the role of tough guy action lead. With every snarl and gruff put down, the man many people wouldn't mind seeing as James Bond completely owns the role of Breyer, throwing himself into the various action set pieces with abandon. He is clearly having a great time in the role, and you'll have a great time watching him, ramping the enjoyment factor of this low-key action thriller by several notches. If this was a preview of how he would be as James Bond, it makes us all eager to see how Elba will transform the iconic role as his own. The team-up part is important, because this is a film that likes to think of itself as an odd couple buddy action movie, with Elba's hardened brute strength contrasting with Madden's comedic fast-talking shtick with not quite hilarious results. On the most part, it works well, with some enjoyable interplay between the pair, but there just isn't enough of it for us to really get to grips with what should be sparkling, quick-fire chemistry. Instead, too much time is spent on setup and on building a backdrop of political unrest. This should have been a movie that zips along with jokes and action at every turn, but instead gets bogged down in trying to deliver a muddled social message at the same time. While Madden doesn't quite have the charm or charisma to go toe-to-toe with Elba, he does have a few excellent sequences. Known to many as the ill-fated Robb Stark on HBO's Game of Thrones. After he bid the TV series goodbye via a bloody red wedding, he went on to be Prince Charming in the live-action version of Cinderella. Physically, Madden looked like a scared boy when placed side by side with the intimidating Idris Elba, which made him just right for the role of the unfortunate Mason, a guy who just so happened to steal the wrong bag. Richard Madden does his best to hold his own opposite him, succeeding at points, and the two prove to have a good chemistry as the classic action movie odd couple. It's almost enough to see past the fact that two English actors have been cast to play Americans. Charlotte Le Bon, looking pretty as ever, resonates strongly as the wannabe bomber whose initial crisis of conscience gets the whole plot going. Kelly Riley's character is woefully underwritten, her appearance frustratingly brief, and while French character actors like Thierry Goddard and José Garcia perform competently in one-dimensional roles, they all fade forgettably into the background whenever Idris Elba is around. On the whole, Bastille Day is a flawed yet engaging action flick that won't quite have you on the edge of your seat but will pique your curiosity till the end. Not completely high-octane but a decent thrill ride that should satisfy fans of the genre and entertain most cinema-goers. Thus it was very much his dedication to Elba as an actor that led this reviewer to attend an opening day screening of this film. However, this reviewer did not know much about it other than the fact that Elba was the lead, that it was an action film and that it looked very much like the kind of thing that Luc Besson and his various collaborators used to shovel out on a fairly regular basis. The Paris setting as implied by the title did not help with this. Having seen the film, the perfect phrase to describe it in this reviewer's opinion is remarkably unremarkable. The plot sees Elba's no-nonsense hard-talking CIA agent team up with a pickpocket who has implicated himself in a bomb plot. Watching the film, this reviewing knew he recognized the actor playing the pickpocket from somewhere. Most people will know Richard Madden for playing Robb Stark on Game of Thrones. This reviewer has to concede the rather embarrassing fact that he does not watch Game of Thrones, although he has read the first 3 novels and enjoyed them very much, but he recognized Madden from Disney's live-action Cinderella. He provides decent enough support here. Also of note is the fact that a surprising amount of film is actually in French. You have to admire the filmmakers for this choice, but this reviewer wonders if it will sit well with the kind of popcorn action audience this film is targeting. In general, the film is, as this reviewer expected, very generic, although not necessarily bad, in terms of execution. Elba is, as always, an excellent action hero, and the action sequences are solidly enough put together, with one definite standout. However, the film is so generic that once its 92-minute runtime is complete, an audience member may very quickly completely forget the film they have just witnessed. In terms of a completely disposable action films, in this reviewer's opinion, you could do a lot worse, but you can also do better. English writer/director James Watkins has taken an impressive leap from the horror genre into mainstream action movie making with Bastille Day, his new film starring Idris Elba. The coolest man in movies is joined on screen by the likable Richard Madden, who came to prominence with his turn as Robb Stark in Game of Thrones. While Watkins' move into the action genre is not without some problems, there is a tone and style that compensates for any story or technical shortfalls that exist. Bastille Day feels like it could have very easily existed back in the 1970s or 1980s alongside films like Joseph Sargent's The Taking of Pelham 123 or Roman Polanski's Frantic, mixing a crime within a crime story that takes place in Paris on Bastille Day Eve. The film opens with a wonderful shot of Sacré-Cœur, the beautiful basilica perched atop Montmartre in the heart of the French capital. The attention of tourists and locals is caught by a young woman who has stripped down naked and is descending the landmark's famous stairs, attracting a huge amount of interest along the way. Unbeknown to the hundreds of onlookers, Michael Mason, Richard Madden, a young American man, moves through the crowd pickpocketing as many people as he can while their attention is diverted by the young woman. This is Mason's stock-in-trade routine. Create a diversion and go to work. Elsewhere, CIA operative Sean Breyer, Idris Elba, reluctantly takes on an assignment for the Paris CIA surveillance operation. Breyer has a history of trouble and he is at immediate loggerheads with the local station chief Tom Luddy, Anatole Youssef. Only Breyer's relationship with senior CIA official Karen Dacker, Kelly Riley, prevents Luddy from booting Breyer out of the field office on his first day. Watkins, who shares screenplay credit with Andrew Baldwin, quickly establishes Mason and Breyer as two misfits who are extremely good at what they do. Fate brings the pair together when Mason mistakenly steals a bag that contains a homemade bomb intended to go off late at night in an office occupied by a local political party. Things don't go as planned, and when the bomb's delivery stooge Zoe Navally, Charlotte L.E. Bone, is interrupted by cleaners, loses her nerve and flees into the Paris night. A short time later, Mason sees Zoe and her bag sitting not far from him. Deciding she's an easy mark, he is quick to act, stealing the bag and its belongings. Zoe is beside herself at the theft and calls her boyfriend to tell him that the bag with the bomb has been stolen. Her boyfriend's boss Raffi Bertrand, Thierry Goddard, is not impressed and he and his team of would-be terrorists set off into the night to find Zoe. Matters turn deadly when Mason, unwittingly, throws the bag away just before its contents detonate. He gets far enough away not to be injured when the bomb explodes, but 4 people who are close by aren't so lucky. The CIA quickly work out, by way of surveillance footage, that Mason had the bag with the bomb and Breyer is quick to volunteer to pull Mason off the street. Dacker agrees, but she tells him to keep it low-key and to stay out of the way of local law enforcement. Those famous last words are the starting point for the film to dramatically ramp up the action quota, as Breyer hits the streets of Paris in search of his suspect. Watkins does an impressive job through this midsection of the story at balancing the action with plot, and there are multiple chase sequences between the various characters as the film's screenplay pulls together its various threads. Bastille Day is a very physical film, with a great deal of stunt work captured at close range. Watkins sensibly reteamed with Tim Maurice-Jones, who was director of photography with him on The Woman in Black. Maurice-Jones captures the action in particular style, and those who have seen other films he has shot, such as Snatch and Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, will understand the visual dynamic he brings to his latest collaboration with Watkins. While it's not the greatest film the genre has ever produced, Bastille Day is a well-polished action thriller that has a unique tone, a solid story and a very good cast headlined by the always cool Idris Elba. It's well and truly worth the trip to the cinema if for no other reason than the great shots of Paris featured throughout the film. If I had to describe Bastille Day, I would describe it as a national day of celebration in France that falls on the anniversary of the storming of the Bastille in 1789, during the French Revolution. I'd imagine you then turn to me and tell me I was an idiot. This is a movie review and you were referring to the film of the same name released in 2016. If I had to describe Bastille Day, the movie, I would say it was essentially an audition by actor Idris Elba to prove that he was capable of taking over the role of James Bond, a role Elba has been consistently linked to for a number of years now. Beyond that, it's a by-the-numbers action film. There's some nice and interesting ideas in the premise, but the film doesn't commit to following through with them, which is a shame. The film centers around American pickpocket Michael Mason, Richard Madden of Game of Thrones fame, who steals a bag from a distracted woman on the streets of Paris. Finding little of value in the bag, Mason discards the stolen bag into a nearby bin, only for a bomb inside the bag to go off, killing 4 bystanders. Caught on CCTV, Mason goes on the run from both the French authorities and CIA agent Briar, Elba. Meanwhile, a vast conspiracy unravels inside the French police and intelligence agencies. The cast, including Elba, Madden, Charlotte L. Bone, Kelly Riley, and Jose Garcia all perform their roles gamely, but neither the screenwriters nor the director really committed to this film in the way that they needed to. It borrows elements from far better films. The Fugitive, Die Hard with a Vengeance and the Daniel Craig-led Bond films were all films I was reminded of and wished I was watching during the hour and a half that this film was on. So many elements were teased but not explored, whether that was the simpler idea of a pickpocket being framed for a terror attack or the more complex ideas touched on of racial profiling immediately following any terror attack. To have these themes readily available and to go for a basic action film seems like such a waste. I'd like to touch on the cinematography on this film as well, while we're here. I don't touch on cinematography as often as I should. But it's notable in this film for using my least favorite cinematography tool quite liberally, that tool being the shaky cam. Shaky cam is where the filmmaker realizes their action set piece is actually quite uninteresting, so, instead of finding a way to creatively improve the set piece, they get the cameraman to put the tripod away and instead film the scene while running on a treadmill. It obviously works on some audiences to increase the excitement, or else it wouldn't be done, but if your set piece is 2 guys running through a Parisian market in a straight line, I'm not going to get more amped up about that just because the cameraman is having a seizure. Anyway, I'm done ranting now. De lot Saint Monden en het lot Saint Jarliet het helemaal verkeerd te gaan met de wereld. In Syrië blijft de oorlog aanhouden, in het Middellandse Zeegebied sterven veel vluchtelingen en aanslagen op het Europees continent blijven ons telkens weer raken. En natuurlijk moet de filmwereld over des jammerlijke gebeurtenissen ook weer producties maken. Zo kwam dit jaar Bastille Day, een actieval prent met Idris Elba en Richard Madden over aanslagen in het hart van Europa. In Bastille Day trekken we naar Parijs. We maken kennis met Michael Mason, een Amerikaans jong iemand die al een kiel jaren in la ville lumière woont. Hij lukt elk dag door de stad om mensen te best elen, want dat is wat hij doet om zijn brood te verdienen. Hij is een van de best zakenrollers in de Frans hoofdstad. Maar wanneer hij op een avonddienstbar waardeval zak van een jongevrou steelt en hij die ergens anders neerzet, gaat plots een enorme bom af. Mason blijft dus de enige getuige van een terroristisch aanslag. Wanneer de Amerikaanse CIA agent Sean Briar probeert om het heel gebeuren op te lossen, gaan Mason wel eens heel goed van pakomen. Zullen de twee eindelijk kunnen aantreffelen we achter de aanslag zit, op zich is het verhaal van Bastille Day niet meteen ongelukkig vernieuwend. Het immers vak het gevoel dat het een actefilm is die al zoveel keren gemaakt is. Alle elementen die in de film terugvindt, van een ultra-competent CIA agent tot een Duitse zakenroller, van een aanslag tot een compleet corrupt systeem, ben wel eens in een ander film te komen. We Bastille Day een gans geeft, moet zich dus niet aan een compleet originele film verwachten. En toch is de film ongelukkig interessant. En dat heeft natuurlijk als te maken met de recent gebeurtenissen in Parijs en ons eigen Saint Brussel. Bastille Day staat dus dichter bij de realiteit dan eender welke film die in het genre werd gemaakt. Natuurlijk was dat totaal niet de bedoeling van de makers van de film, maar het komt de film logischerwich wel ten goed. Het doet nadenken over wat allemaal gebeurt en doet soms ook wel wat ongemakkelijk voelen. Maar gelukkig gaat het in dit geval puur om entertainment. En entertainen doet de film dan ook meer dan behoorlijk. Hoewel het verhaal niet het meest straf is dat de lot Saint Jaren zag, Zal de film je op geen enkel moment vervelen. Je zo en het woord durend met de personages me naar het brain actor de ontslagen. Bastille de neemt je dan ook mee op een boeien trip door Parijs zonder dat je daar maar al te veel voorhoofd nate denken dat het goed aan Bastille de is dat de acte bovendien heel erg geloofwaardig is. Als blijft klein genoeg omte geloven, en toch is het hier en daar formidable bombastisch. Je ziet geen fenomenal stunts of iemand die het plots te gaan een ongeloofwaardig aantal slecteriken moet aannemen. Idris Elba, die voortreffelijk de rol speelt van CIA-agent John Breyer, komt bijzonder goed over. Hij draagt de film compleet en komt bovendien op geen enkel moment als een mislukt agent over. Dat komt wellicht ook door het perfect contrast met Richard Madden's personage. Madden speelt de onwetend Michael Mason, die ook behoorlijk geloofwaardig overkomt dat Madden en Elba zorgen voor muispel op het scherm, wat de film natuurlijk ongelooflijk ten goed komt. Noter trouwens ook extra de prestatie van Idris Elba. Hij is toch helemaal klaar om in de huid van James Bond te kruipen, niet. Het acteerwerk is dus meer dan goed, maar ook het regiewerk komt ongelooflijk goed over. James Watkins, die eerder zorgt voor prenten als The Woman in Black, 2012, en Eden Lake, 2008, presenteert de kijker een visueel heel erg interessante film. Als is heel erg goed in beeld gebracht en bovendien gaat het verhaal aan een heel erg aangenaam tempo vooruit dat Bastille de is een erg interessante en bovendien ook meer dan goed geacteerd film. Het feit dat de film zo dicht bij de realiteit staat, zonder dat dus dat ik beoogt, zorgt natuurlijk voor een extra portie enthousiasme wanneer je de prent opzet. Het mag dan misschien allemaal wel niet bij de origineel overkomen, het verhaal entertaint de kijker wel. Regisseur James Watkins presenteert de kijker bovendien ook een erg mooi geregisseerd prent. Bastille de is misschien niet de best film die je uitzag, maar de moeite is hij zeker. Bekijk nu de onderstaande trailer en laat je door Idris Elba en Richard Madden overtuigen dat Paris does rather lend itself to filmmakers. And James Watkins and Andrew Baldwin's ingenious script certainly makes the most of it. There's a chase across those famous rooftops. Check. There's a chic, attractive damsel in distress. Check. There are eye-caressing vistas of that stunning skyline. Check. And there's all that lovely history that still resonates today. Throw in the city's rising immigration problem, the bitter echo of the Paris riots and the increasing reality of terrorism on the streets and you have a piquant crackerjack of a thriller. Had the narrative strands of Bastille Day not been so skillfully woven together, one might have accused the film of overachieving. Yet the whole thing flows as effortlessly and efficiently as the TGV railway. The director James Watkins certainly knows his audience. It was he who brought us the deeply disturbing, frighteningly credible Eden Lake and the genuinely unnerving and atmospheric The Woman in Black. Watkins kicks off his new film with not only a desktop shot of the Sacre-Cœur but of a beautiful naked woman walking down the steps in front of it. She proves to be not just a distraction for us, the audience, but for the victims of Michael Mason, Richard Madden, a pickpocket with almost supernatural dexterity. He is an American, on the run from himself, in Paris and is not the only one. CIA surveillance agent John Breyer, Idris Elba, has already been reprimanded for his aggressive tactics and is being held on a short leash by his superior, Kelly Riley. Whatever goes down in the French capital next, he better mind his PS and QS. Meanwhile, the French damsel, Zoe Navali, Charlotte Le Bon, has been persuaded to plant a bomb in an empty office building as a warning. But at the sight of a gaggle of cleaners there, she changes her mind and heads back to the nocturnal streets of the Pigalle. While she's momentarily distracted, her bag, containing the bomb, is snatched by Michael and summarily disposed of, moments before it goes off, killing 4 civilians. Now Michael is the most wanted man on the continent and a whole chain of increasingly nightmarish events are set in motion which only Breyer would seem to have the nous and nerve to sort out. With its original release delayed last year, for obvious reasons, Bastille Day may play like a by-the-numbers action thriller, but it's playing with big numbers. With racist unrest manipulated by social media, think back to the London riots of 2011, the city becomes a tinderbox in which multiculturalism and police corruption clash in a plot so venal that one can but admire its audacity. The French do not come off well, while the three principal American characters are all played by British actors. Idris Elba in particular nails his part of the loose cannon, with his dry delivery of the one-liners putting Pierce Brosnan to shame. Note well, you producers of Bond 25. It's also a relief to encounter an Anglo-French film in which the French participants actually speak in French, and there's a surprising amount of French dialogue. This, then, is guilty pleasure escapism of the highest order, skillfully plotted, highly topical and beautifully played by Elba in a film big enough to support his considerable presence. This film, directed by Paul Greengrass, screenplay by Billy Ray, based on A Captain's Duty, Somali Pirates, produced by Scott Rudin, starring Tom Hanks, cinematography Barry Ackroyd, edited by Christopher Rouse, music by Henry Jackman, production companies Columbia Pictures, distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing, release date September 27, 2013, running time 134 minutes, country United States, languages English Somali, budget $55 million, box office $220.6 million.